Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Covenant Cast. I'm your host, Zach.
And I'm Steven.
I'm Jonathan.
And today we're going to be recapping Star Wars Worlds and answering a ton of your questions. All right, let's kick this off. Before we dive in, we got a ton of questions. And if you gave us one of these questions, thank you so much. We had a huge response on social media because we were asking for if you have questions about our Worlds experience, and people just asked a lot of questions.
Yeah,
so
well, that's good.
Excited to get to those. Before we do, let's talk about our week real quick because we were at Worlds.
We were at Worlds.
Some of us were. It was a little different for the two of you this time.
Yeah, it was very different.
It was a different experience, and also
Totally different experience.
maybe more importantly than any of that is some changes coming to the podcast. So I'll pass it over to you, Steve.
Yeah,
and we'll dive in.
that's the thing is, whenever we travel together, and a lot of you guys listening are probably the same, you have a lot of space to brainstorm about stuff, to talk about things.
Highway space.
A lot of highway space, a lot of driving time, and you cover the first hour. We always get into like politics and religion, just get that off the table, and then just kind of update everybody on our views that are generally unchanging, but maybe a little refined. And then we move on to a little bit of silence. Somebody puts headphones in, etc. And then the questions begin, and it's like, I'm just not satisfied with X, Y, and Z. And I think one of our greatest curses and blessings as a group of people who are engaged in business together, I guess you would say, is that we hate like standing still and are always thinking we should be doing things better and could be doing things better. And once we get somewhere, we want to move to the next thing. So that is, on the one hand, you try to fight that because it's not very realistic from a business standpoint. You generally have to get somewhere and then like stay there for a while and then maybe move on because you can move too fast.
Yeah, the real balance is giving something a chance to pay off before being like making a judgment.
New thing.
Try this new thing. And it's
Yeah.
also just like the energy in creating a new thing is very different and much more intensive than maintaining one.
That's right.
And I think naturally,
although I am a honer.
I am a creator.
Yeah, that's true.
I think by our nature, though, as an entity, right, we prefer to be pushing forward.
Yeah, we'd
instead
rather
of
be
just
moving.
maintaining.
Yeah.
So.
And on that note, this podcast is going to change. I know it's going to change.
And to be fair, we waited a whole year before we started messing with the format.
Pretty impressive.
So that's more than we do for most things.
But we're going to change it, and and I don't know what it's going to be ultimately, but I think it's going to be just a different kind of experience, and we'll continue changing it until it's where we think it should be. But along the same lines, a lot of the videos we got at Worlds this year are also a different format, and this is kind of what we're looking at with the podcast as well. Something that we really, really want to push forward is combining everything essentially kind of that we've done over the past so many years and making it into a singular format that we can take that and we can innovate within that format rather than trying to find the format that is like going to work.
Yeah.
And there's really two things that happen. It's conversations about the industry and with people like Eric Lang and Luke Crane and really wanting to cover that more kind of holistic look at the industry as a whole and look at the people in it and what they're doing. That combined with games, actual games being played, people having a good time around the table, actually showing, especially people who have never really been in the genre before, what it's like to actually have an experience of playing a game and getting to know somebody, which is really how all of us got to know each other better and what we've seen in the store many millions of times over and over at conventions for our entire lives. That thing is like, this is a really powerful medium. Showing off what that actually looks like is another important part of the kind of the journey for us. So if we can combine those two together, all the better. So,
and a lot of our conversations that we have on the cast are conversations that we've had partially over games.
That's right.
Which is where we're talking about, our tournament's bad for games as we're playing a game.
And that's why it's great.
And so on and so forth.
That's why it's great. You come into the store, you sit down, you have a beer, and you're there. Right?
So we'll see. I mean, next week's podcast is going to be different.
It might be, it's going to be different. I don't know what exactly is going to be quite yet, but we have some ideas. Anyway, Matt, the interview, I guess, in quotations, with Matt Newman about Arkham, and we talked to Jeremy Zorn about Destiny, but we did it this time while playing a game of those respective games. So Matt, we played Arkham, Jeremy played Destiny, and got some kind of previews along the way and showed off some new cards, and it felt a lot better. Still not there yet, but it felt better. And so we might be porting that into the podcast, maybe two of the hosts playing a game and discussing questions from the audience, that kind of thing, is kind of what's in the collective Covenant mind right now. So there's that. And then if you want to talk about me personally, just real quick, I did, the weekend before Worlds, I think it's worth noting that I did get out on a sailboat again, which is a huge thing for me. And of particular note, for the first time, was sailing at night under a full moon, and it was like, I've never felt like more of a Greyjoy in my life than literally, it's like totally silent. You feel this boat going super fast. I was actually steering at the time, and you can see everything, but you can't see any of your wind stuff, like your little instruments, that are kind of cheating ways of seeing where the wind is, so you have to feel it. And that was a really amazing experience.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, I was happy to
That's
have
actually
that.
really
So if there's
cool.
any sailors out there listening, I definitely envy you, and I hope to join your ranks soon.
Steven the
in
sailor.
a permanent way.
Yeah,
Right?
nice. That's excellent.
What about you, John? How was your week?
Well, my week, so my wife and I, since we moved out to the country, we've been wanting to get a dog. And we've applied 3 or 4 times for different dogs at different shelters, and every time it's like, whoops, we lost your application. Oh, you got it in too late, no more dogs left. That kind of thing.
And I feel like your life is trials
We
and
have no more
tribulations.
dogs.
We have no more
There
dogs.
are no more dogs left.
Fresh out.
Yeah, fresh out of dogs.
Need to grow some more.
Yeah, gotta find some more. And that happened multiple times where I was getting pretty frustrated about the whole thing. But a friend of ours came across a dog that was a stray that she took in, and the dog was very much not happy in her tiny city-based backyard, and she thought maybe it would be much happier on our land, so we said, yeah, bring him on.
What's the name?
Bogart. Named after Humphrey
Also known
Bogart.
Bogey?
Or Bogey.
Or Bogues?
Bogey, Bogues.
I like Bogues.
Yeah. All sorts of various takes on that. Anyhow, the problem is that being a stray, he has heartworms. And what I didn't realize about heartworms...
So serious. I didn't know that either.
is that so first of all, it takes 3 to 5 years to kill a dog. So that's good to know.
In general,
And,
or heartworms specifically?
Heartworms. In general. Second of all, he's only 1 year old, so the math says even if we kept him on, the heartworms, we saw him for a couple of years, not what we want to do. But he's young, he's healthy, and the infection is very
worst
beginning.
thing.
Yeah.
You can deal with the heartworms, though, right? Possibly?
You can deal with heartworms. It is a 3-month process. And during those 3 months, during the treatment of this thing, the dog basically can't break a sweat.
If the heart pumps too much, the worms get thrown
The
into
worm
other
bit,
parts
the
of
dead
body.
worm bits get thrown into its lungs and its organs, and they don't go away. They just puncture this stuff, which
Yeah, 'cause worms don't
and
die.
they don't
They just
heal
keep
from that.
regenerating.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
these worms I think are dead in some way, but they will still get into place, especially the lungs and decrease lung capacity.
So you just have to lock them down.
Yeah. So I got a 1-year-old dog out in the middle of everything that I got to keep locked down for 3 months.
Yeah.
And so...
This is a volunteer thing that you did.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
Why would you do it?
Well, that's the thing. So my
his heart,
wife,
man. It's his
from,
heart.
from
It's
the
her
very
problem.
beginning, she said that she wanted a dog, and I said not while we were in the city, and she said that seems fair. And so then we moved out to the country. So
You got the country, she gets the
kept
dog.
her into the bargain.
Yeah.
I keep mine into
Sounds
the bargain.
kind of like exactly what happened with me, except there was no bargain.
She just got the dog.
Showed up one
Yeah,
day.
I've got this thing now.
But the worst part about it,
deal
there are
with
great
this.
parts too, dogs and love and
Etc.
companionship.
Right?
That's real.
Family values, et cetera.
But this dog gets up at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I
you
don't know
love.
about our viewers at home, but I don't get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I have luckily had the luxury of
Welcome
that.
to the club.
I know. So now
About
every
5
morning I
years
get a
in now,
little wet
Jonathan.
nose right in my face, and I got to go walk him around and stuff. Not too much, obviously, or he will die. So
You can't just let them loose.
yeah, so I can't let him loose, walk off all the energy. So then I do that, and then he walks around and whines for a while, and then eventually I get 30 minutes of sleep on the couch, and then get ready for work. So I'm very tired. Is what
This
the dog
explains
That's
is.
a
a
bad
lot.
system.
This
Yeah,
explains a lot.
yeah.
Well,
And
3
so
months
we're
will go
working on
quickly.
it. And this is just, we've literally had him for less than a week at this point. So I'm sure all the systems will shake themselves out as he gets more comfortable, because he's been moved around a bunch, and as we get more comfortable and start to understand what the things that he actually wants, etc.
I'm excited that you have another saga in your life that we get to keep updating on.
Well, here's the deal. One of the things I've realized about myself, and luckily my wife is on the same page, although more reluctantly than I am, is that as soon as I get to a comfortable spot in my life, I want to just blow that up.
we were just talking about that.
We're the exact opposite,
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
You and I.
I kind of. There's probably a better way to say this.
I think it's a common thing.
But it's the sort of concept of just I've got eternity to sleep, right? I've only got now to experience as much of this as I can, so I'm going to try to push that.
But
as
there's
hard
a
as
balance
possible.
of like, if you aren't sleeping or taking care of yourself, then enjoying it won't be possible.
So I mean,
you'll
that's
just be tired and
so
upset all day.
if you look at the graph, it's like it starts up here, and then eventually the systems develop, everything gets pretty easy, and then it spikes, and then it spikes. I'm not just keeping spiking up onto the atmosphere. I'm trying to keep
seasons.
Yeah, I try to keep it sort of a constant year-long average of stress and lack of sleep.
Year-long average.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
I just want that graph to be as low as possible.
Just,
at all times.
just that's the thing, it'll bottom out in about 70 years.
Yeah. All right. Well, my week, I was literally at Worlds for the past 7 or 8 days.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
and
Yeah, it should be. No, we only were there for 2 days.
Yeah,
And
that's
it
what was different.
Before World
Yeah.
started, really.
Yeah.
We got there early because they were doing the live stream, the hyperspace, which we'll talk about again in the questions. And then you guys left, and I went to play Destiny, which we'll also talk about. But we'll get to that. So let's get to the first question. Let's just dive in. Talking about Star Wars Worlds, lots of questions from everybody on this. The first one is, before I even dive in, let me back it up for a second.
I hate it
You
when
can
we do
use
this.
the hashtag AskCovenant to get your questions answered right here on the
Oh,
show.
that's fine.
On Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, anywhere on the internet, we'll pick up a hashtag. We'll probably
Anywhere.
find it.
Anywhere. Just type it into the
Leave it in
browser.
the comments of any of our content, and we'll be happy to answer it. First question from Carl Duty. He says, the reaction to X-Wing 2.0 has been very diverse. What was your initial reaction to the news, and did that reaction change as you became more informed?
That's a really good question. Man,
very good
X-Wing Second
question.
Edition definitely happened, right? So that was a big deal. Totally wrong decision to make that hyperspace announcement Star Wars game related. That was a complete mistake. Because you have a room full of half of the people who don't care about X-Wing, and then to top that all off, they get a second edition X-Wing and a mug, which,
Well, and not only that, and I think we talked about this before, but that by just the very nature of saying, here's a big thing about Star Wars, you create this giant void where anyone who plays an FFG Star Wars game now puts their hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
Well, and
Ready to be crushed.
Ready to be crushed,
I don't
just
know-
into the bag.
I don't know why they did it. Because I'm a part on online, right? Whether it's Reddit or Discords or Facebook groups of all these different communities for all the games, right? From Armada and Imperial Assault to Destiny and X-Wing, even Star Wars LCG. There was a rumor for 2 weeks building up after they said, "Hey, we're going to have a hyperspace announcement. It's a day early before Worlds about our Star Wars games. Hashtag all the different games." But the Star Wars community was like, "Oh, maybe they're announcing a reboot into a cooperative." And then you get there, and it's like the announcement's going, and it probably took 50 minutes into the 60-minute announcement
Slow deflation.
before people there and the internet were like, "Wait a second." I think
They're
they're
not
only
gonna talk
talking about second
anything
edition.
else.
But here's the thing about that, and actually I think talking about the way that it was announced kind of gets at the reality of some of the reactions to second edition and why they were what they were. But I think the problem that, and I was going to say FFG, but it's A&A. See, this is the thing that I learned more than anything this past week, and I got to talk to Andrew on camera for a second time post some of the reactions, so I got to talk to him about that. But FFG is really the creative studio side of things that pushes these products out way ahead of time, and then all of the things that happen after that is an A&A function.
Publishing,
in North
marketing, and
America.
stuff.
Most particularly marketing, and most particularly organized play, too, which I think is fascinating. But so this whole thing is an A&A thing. This is not an FFG thing. FFG may have needed to contribute assets to it, but it's like an A&A project. And what I feel like is the constant kind of question mark or head scratcher for me on these kinds of things is, that line of reasoning was, if we say it's an X-Wing announcement, everybody will immediately know that we're announcing a second edition. But the next step, I think, in that chain rarely happens, which is like, why do we care about that?
Yeah, so that'd be great.
It's like there's
Let's
that
let them get hyped about it.
kind of holding
Yeah.
on to this weird thing about it needs to be secret and it needs to be obscured. But the reality is, okay, so you have everybody talking about, oh my gosh, an X-Wing announcement. Is it second edition? Here's how I would do it. Here's what it should be. What should it be? Like, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? You have the right community. They're more engaged than they have been in the past. And then there you drop it. And it's like, that's fine though, isn't it?
Or you can give something to all of your games
Right.
in that announcement. Like announce a new wave for Armada, announce a new whatever.
Well, and that's
But-
the thing is like so many of these games are just waiting for a release date.
So like just something.
So crushing
mention
their
something.
dreams on a hyperspace
Which also
report is-
not a FFG.
But
waste of
to
time.
the
Yeah,
to the
that's
question,
true.
right? The initial reaction to the news, I think, was kind of revealed in what you said, which is if they had said X-Wing, maybe everyone already thinks, oh, they're announcing second edition.
Yeah.
And the reaction for me, as someone who's played X-Wing since the very beginning, is, oh, of course, right? It was like, I've been waiting on something. I've been talking about it on the podcast
we
for
all saw
a
the
year.
Adepticon thing. Although, to be fair, the
game,
Worlds tournament ended very well in a nice, diverse way.
It did.
But this whole thing, on our end, X-Wing was like, this is less exciting than ever.
Yeah.
About the time Jump Masters were really around. And it's like the second or third finals that we were trying to do commentary on, where it's like, here's this dumb, big Jump Master.
Here's the new version of the Jump
around,
Master after FAQ.
and the same old Miranda and bombs and all this kind of stuff. And it just wasn't X-Wing. I mean, it just wasn't. Like, if you compare it to like the FFG 2013 finals or 2014.
With the TIE Swarms.
You have Heaver with B-Wings against the TIE Swarm. I could watch that forever. I could care less about this Jump Master, Miranda stuff. So for the past year, we've just been kind of like, pass a little bit on the X-Wing content.
Initial reaction, right? And we obviously learned more, but it was like, thankfully, finally.
I was
like,
huge. I mean, we've
super
been waiting
happy,
for this for
super
years.
excited. So, that was definitely the initial reaction. Super positive.
That was the initial reaction. Did it change as we became more informed? And I think it did change a little bit as I saw different opinions on this. And you start to appreciate perspective, right? So there's a perspective of how does this affect me? There's a perspective of how does it affect the industry, which is obviously with us being kind of on the retailer, content producer side of it, we're looking probably more at the industry than how does this affect Stephen Woolley's X-Wing habits, which, FYI, I might play. So it goes from 0 to maybe. Because if I can play any amount of balanced E-Wing lists that aren't
E-Wings and B-Wings.
I'm just happy about the turret for some reason. That's
Yeah,
the
it's
one that goes.
great.
The turret, the bombs,
You're
the
telling
way
me,
the
baby.
both the
So there's
charges.
the industry perspective, there's a simple game design perspective. When you look at something and say, this isn't right, it's bloated. And, I think based on your perspective is how you're going to view this. I think the talking points around the announcement were not exactly as refined as they should have been, especially as follow-up questions came through to ANA and FFG. And particularly, I think that the main thing that wasn't communicated well enough was how FFG/ANA is viewing the transition to second edition, how it's all the way pushed back until a later release date, it's not a now kind of thing, and that you can kind of slowly get your ships caught up. It's like, okay, starting second edition, I want to play this Imperial list. I have all the ships. I want to play this Imperial list. I'll buy the conversion kit and a core set and play that list for a month or two. And then I'll buy a conversion kit for the Rebels if I start to want to play a Rebel list. And then a couple months later, maybe I'll buy a Scum. And so you can kind of slowly get your ships caught up or not at all. And that's something that wasn't expressly
talked about. Yeah.
But I understand, new editions are always going to be divisive.
It's hard, because there's a lot of people
it's a lot of money.
Bought a lot of stuff, and then it's like, hey, you have to buy more. So I get it. But I also know, just from my experience with tons of games, that if this had continued happening and they hadn't done this, there wouldn't be any game to talk about in 2 years.
That's a really important point.
I definitely agree.
So
people will disagree with you on that and say, like, this is what's going to kill X-Wing. And again, it's like kind of episode 1 of his Star Wars Destiny Dead, right? Which is pretty provocative at the time. It's not, and it's not going to be. And X-Wing Second Edition is going to be hugely successful. Like, not at all from a, hopefully not a biased perspective of like hoping to sell it to people, which obviously we're in the business of doing, but it's going to be hugely successful.
Just straight out.
Like it's all the right changes.
And I think why it's important, right, is like, I've always felt like X-Wing was really special. And I think it's because it's so easily accessible, and it's Star Wars, and it looks great, and it's pre-painted. It's such a gateway into this community, into this kind of gaming, this kind of gaming community. And so to know that they're investing the kind of resources they're investing in to make this, because it's not, right now, X-Wing 1.0 is not accessible. If you're new, it is a nightmare. It's like, I was talking to a player last night, and it's like, I have to buy this ship, and this ship for my ships. And then you have to buy these 6 over here for your upgrades. And so
crazy.
it's just not maintainable. And so that's why I get excited about it.
The weird patchy upgrade cards where it's like, well,
errata,
the errata and that kind of stuff. Yeah. I'll tell you the 2 things, and we got 2 pages of questions. So
yeah, we got to get moving.
Well, that's a big deal, though.
But
That's a very big question.
Here are the 2 things that I got really, really, really excited about when I heard. And I haven't heard it discussed very much, but for some reason, for me, these are the things that make me go crazy about it. So the first thing, and this was on the podcast we did last week, we learned that they had basically had a spreadsheet, Alex and Davey and Max, had a spreadsheet from the very beginning, from the moment they took over the game, of all the stuff that they were worried about, that they saw in the tournaments that they were TOing, that was probably going to be a thing that they'd like to change. And that's been going on for years and years and years.
It's like 4 years.
Well, making a list of, if I could change a fundamental, here's what I would change.
Here's what I would change. Here's what it needs to do. Like, this is where we've kind of gone off of the path. They compiled that. They refined it. They took that to Andrew. And from everything I've heard, Andrew said yes to every single one of the things that they wanted. He trusted their developers. He trusted their experience.
And Andrew's the head of the studio.
And Andrew's the head of the studio, yeah. He trusted their experience, and they were super stoked about that, which makes me super stoked about that, because I know when you look at something that you care about for that long, and you like passionately want to change it or want to fix it and help it, those are the right ideas, right? More importantly, I think this is so cool, is that Frank particularly, but the entire team went back through for these conversion kits and redesigned every single one of the existing ships, cards, pilots, and upgrades to fit in the new system before they release the new system. So that means the entirety of the current X-Wing fits into this now more simplified, more streamlined system that they, like, when you first came out with the X-Wing and the TIE Fighter and blah, blah, that was great, and the system worked for them. But now you literally have a system that fits the entire breadth of what X-Wing has become over its entire lifespan in like a nice, comfortable way that's streamlined and awesome. That to me is fantastic. There's nothing that breaks this system in the entirety of the X-Wing ships.
Well, and I've never heard of a miniatures game doing that. Where it's like when you have a reboot or a new edition, it's like, here's the one book with some of the models that we're converting, and then they slowly do it over time. And so it's pretty cool to think about them designing the whole thing at once.
Yeah.
Right? Like 5 years of X-Wing being redesigned at the same time. And that's as a player, and we'll just get to the next question, so I'll answer that in a second. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge challenge and we've never even seen that with the game.
Yeah.
Like if at the first of X-Wing, they've been like, hey, let's design 5 years of content right now. And been capable of having the experience to be able to do that.
Yep.
It would have been a very different game.
If anything breaks the system, we'll go back, we'll look at the system again.
Yeah.
Blah, blah.
All right, next question. Cody Colt says, based on everything you've seen and learned in regards to 2.0 for X-Wing, what is TC most excited for in the new edition? Be it mechanics, quality of ships, getting back to the roots, what is it that's getting you pumped?
Go ahead.
I'll tell you what I'm most excited about for second edition is, like I said, an opportunity to play the list that I want to play, which to me in a game is the most important thing imaginable. I don't need it to be the best, I need it to be non-embarrassing. And I was into X-Wing for a hot minute because the E-Wing to me is like it's like the Rapier in Escape Velocity. It's like, it's the ship that I think is the perfect model and representation of me as an entity, as a human being. And I want to play at least 2 of them in a list. But in X-Wing 1.0, all that you had available was basically core and horn, super decked out, and that was what was good with the E-Wing. And if you wanted to run more than that, it just didn't make sense. The points were too high, the benefits were too low. So everybody out there who's like me that loves, and I think this is why X-Wing is so good. You love a particular ship, like Keith, our friend Keith in Tulsa. He wants to play the Falcon. He wants to play those freighters, and that's what he's there to do. And it doesn't matter if they're good or bad, he's here for that ship. I'm here for the E-Wing. There are many other people who are here for headhunters. They want their squad to look and feel a certain way. And the 2.0 changes can guarantee that that is always a relevant option. And I don't know if they'll pull that off, but they now have the ability to pull that off. And so that to me is the most exciting part of this. You can play the exact Star Wars theme that you want to play. And it's powerful.
Add the note there, the change that makes that possible is the removal of point cost.
That's right.
And upgrades.
Yeah, and the removal of upgrade slots is that the web integration, which I'll be curious to see them pull off.
Good luck.
But that removal means that at all times they can see what ships are being used, what aren't, what are being successful at events, and they can tweak points. So even if, and that was one of the cool things they said in that podcast that we did, which was now when they're designing, they aren't even concerned with points. It's, does the ship feel like the ship? And then once the ship feels like the ship, we play with it and we say, hey, is this worth 20 points, 30 points, 40 points? And you actually play with the pilot ability, right? And it's like, it doesn't matter if Vader ends up needing to be 100 points. Does this pilot ability make him feel like Vader? And then you can point cost him appropriately.
I just think it's powerful.
I think that's the way you do it.
It's powerful.
There's an article that I reference constantly by the guys that did Road Redemption, which I kickstarted back in the day.
Reference that.
It's a great game.
Is that released yet officially?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I believe it's official. Yeah, it's officially released.
We have a great time with
It's
that game.
so much fun. Road Redemption, one of their early blogs was called Find the Fun, right? And they said, before we design what the level looks like, before we design the graphics, before we design anything. Like, we just want the game to feel fun. We want you to feel like you're on a motorcycle
exactly
hitting
the concept,
people.
right?
Yeah, and that's exactly the
When you
concept.
fly an interceptor, it should feel like you have an interceptor on the board.
Don't start with all the gritty stuff, because like that stuff may change, and that's fine. The important thing is, once you put it on the table, do you get the feeling of flying it, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have
the two. I got two things that get me pumped. I mentioned it earlier, but the turrets and the bullseye arc.
And the turrets specifically are no longer 360. There's no
longer
360
360.
turrets. You have to take the action to move your
That's
turret
right.
around.
And it's all in the bullseye arc, which is there are certain abilities that if there's directly in front of you, then you get a special bonus. So basically, if you fly better, you play better. And in miniatures games, and particularly games with random number generators, the more stuff that you can put to skill, like flying, the cooler it is to me.
X-Wing should just be about flying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so much about the maneuvering position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, it comes back to it's kind of a multifaceted but one change, which is the faction identities. And we talked a little bit about this in the podcast, but basically making each faction unique and have their own strengths and because right now it kind of amorphously grew in first edition where they all kind of have access to the same tools. Because like something like the mobile firing arc, which got invented later, you didn't have in the first edition.
Yeah.
Or like Vader, as an example, didn't have a system slot and so on and so forth. But pairing with that, the reality that they're switching to the system where you can buy all the things for one faction and get everything you need to play that faction.
That's a big
So
deal.
previously, I was going through my stuff yesterday because I'm giving all my Scum stuff to Tim. I'm keeping all the Imperial stuff. And I'm giving all my Rebel stuff to new players who are wanting to play. And that's great. But
Because you've only ever wanted to play Imperials.
Ever.
It's just I need the upgrades from all these ships.
So I have all these ships. But it was funny because I literally had 6 Star Vipers. And Grant was like, why do you have 6 Star Vipers? And it's like, oh, that's where auto thrusters comes in. So there was a point where Tim was playing 2 IG 2000s that each had auto thrusters. And I had 4 ship builds that had 4 ships that had auto thrusters in it.
Yeah.
And it's like I had to buy 6 Star Vipers to play the list I wanted to play.
See, and sorry to interrupt you,
No,
but
you're
isn't
good.
that the pitch that's missing from the ANA marketing rollout is like, everybody's talking about the $50 conversion kits, which maybe is too expensive. Maybe the market says no to that. Maybe nobody wants to upgrade their ships, or et cetera. But nobody's talking about the fact that you just spent $120 on Star Vipers for a piece of cardboard, a singular card.
One little bitty card. And that's the trick where it's like, I think people, if you get used to owning it all and you already bought it all and you've been playing everything, and if you're the kind of player that wants to play everything, but comparatively, if you look at like 40K, no one in their right mind plays it all or owns all the
I
models.
bet we can find those people,
But they're not in the right mind. But the reality is, like, even if you play a faction, like I play miniature war games, it's like when you play a faction, you don't even own all the stuff in your faction.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
And so,
yeah.
With X-Wing, it's like I'm going to be buying 2 Imperial conversion kits. I'm going to be buying the Imperial ships. I'll probably also play First Order. Yeah.
When that happens.
Empire's baby.
Yeah.
But it's actually way better for me. It just got infinitely cheaper. Like every time a wave came out, I'd be like, oh, I need 2 of every ship so I can have all the upgrades. And it's like, oh, there's a good EPT in this random E-Wing. It's
Yeah.
like, oh,
or heaven forbid
well,
an epic ship.
Oh, I've been there too.
has happened.
You know what's funny? I bought the Rebel and the Scum epic ship.
Ugh.
I even bought the Imperial epic
Oh,
ship.
there's like $90?
Yeah. I even bought the Imperial epic ship to get Palpatine and the title for Vader. And it's like, I've never played a game epic. I don't play X-Wing because it's a 3-hour slog.
That's
ever.
insane.
So that's the change easily that I get most excited about. And I do think that is the marketing point that FFG didn't talk about enough.
Or ANA, we should say. didn't
ANA,
talk
whoever did. That
was
wasn't hit
ANA.
enough, right?
It
So,
was ANA.
Maybe that'll get pushed more in the future, but that is definitely the thing I'm most excited
Yeah.
about. All right, next question from William Highwood.
William.
Is
He's a
great.
familiar
He's the
sounding name.
2-time back-to-back Adapticon
Adapticon
champion.
champion.
Fear the Beard. His question is, how long do you think this X-Wing 2nd Edition app can keep the game alive and continue to expand before a 3rd edition or dying out?
Another point of clarification, and this is hard when new editions come out, to communicate everything that needs to be communicated and yet keep it concise and pithy and easy to understand. But this is another thing that is kind of like there's a lot of confusion as to what does it mean to have an app and these kinds of things. The important piece to note is that the way you should consider this is the point costs and the ships that are legal and the upgrade slots are all baked into an interface that is separate from cardboard. That interface exists as an app, so you can download it on your phone as far as I understand, but also in your browser.
You can print it out if you want to.
You can print out
And
the
as a PDF.
PDFs. So it's just all of those things are from the literal X-Wing cardboard to a secondary source that can be updated immediately and is easily accessible for everybody, right? So you can look at it on your browser, on your web browser. Yeah, even if you need to go to like the library, internet's free at the library, you can go look at it there. You can build your list.
Even at the game store. Like
Even
if you
at
have a game store you're going to, like
Absolutely.
they can pull it up on their we do that all the time with the FAQs and all that kind of stuff.
And so you can go there, you print out the list, or you can just put your list together there and then collect your components, make sure you have it right, and then you can take it and play it. Now, this is not the kind of thing where every 2 to 3 days you have to check the app because, there's been changes. It'll be, from everything I can understand, the same kind of announcement of there is going to be an update to the X-Wing system. We're going to be changing some point costs, changing some things. We're not going to do it before a big event. We're not going to do it like immediately to when people have been testing for Worlds. It's going to be just like the FAQ announcements were planned, announced, etc. It happens. You look at the new stuff. Here it is. Okay, put it together. My list got better, maybe worse. Oh, E-Wings are 2 points cheaper now. Oh my gosh, I can get some better E-Wings.
Or they got a new upgrade slot.
They got a new upgrade slot. I can pack missiles now. I build my new list. We play, and that's it. So the app doesn't, everyone says app, and everyone thinks I gotta have my phone for during play and to build the list. That is not true. You only need to build your list on a website or on your phone. Make sure that it's legal there, and then during play and during the games, you don't need to reference it at all. So that's important to note. To William's question, while I'm still on this rant, X-Wing 2nd Edition, keeping the game alive and continuing to expand before 3rd Edition. I have every reason to believe that the intent of the designers and the studio itself is to never print a new edition. I've heard that from other companies before, but they keep printing it in the same way. So it's like, we'll never do a 2nd edition, or we'll never do a 3rd edition because this 2nd edition rulebook is perfect. It's like, that's not going to ever be true.
Yeah.
The reason that I think this is different is that you literally have a sustainable system that allows you to adjust things forever, indefinitely. And I don't see anything fundamentally in the system of X-Wing that is too confusing or too weird that we need to change. So the system is strong. You can always adjust the point cost of everything that's coming out on all the ships. I think it could go forever, honestly. I think I would not be surprised to see it going for the next 10 years.
That's what I was going to put a 10-year mark on it just because of the way things evolve and change. I think that's absolutely right. I think that whenever the designers looked at this new system, they thought, how can we keep this going forever? They don't want to do this again. They want it to be agile. And I will say something that I think is really cool that is a secondary benefit to this app point cost change business. So I've been following God Tier, backed it on Kickstarter, all that stuff. They've been updating the rules every Thursday. New update to the rules, here's a change log, which gets me excited. Every Thursday I log in, hey, oh my gosh, what's the change log, what new stuff has happened? And that actually ends up keeping my interest, generating my interest through slow periods of time where it's like, oh cool, something new changed. So not only do I think this will allow them to continue to change and, actually one other thing about, and this is we learned through interviews with God Tier, they kept saying, you get, like your game is play tested like 100 times more in the first day it's released than your entire play testing period, no matter what you do. And this allows them to take away the things they could, the things that were easy, and the things that I think consistently need changing, and based on playtest results, and take that into a centralized location. So with that said, I agree with Steven. I think it will continue for a long time. I think the excitement will continue for a long time, and I think this is I think it's a really good solution, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the lifestyle game. I think it's going to be the 40K of the next 10 years. Yeah, honestly,
I'm excited to see it.
Maybe we're too rosy about it. I mean, that's an obvious critique of this.
It is. Yeah.
We think positively about a lot of these changes more often than we think negatively about them. I just think this is literally hitting the mark. It's everything we've talked about for the past year and a half actually happening.
To be fair, and I'll put this on the table and see if anyone else picks it up, but I remember whenever 2.0 of Game of Thrones came out, we were not, maybe internally, we were not as rosy about the prognosis for that game for the reasons that Steven mentioned earlier. It had not built in these release valves that the designers could mess with if things got hairy. If there's something in the infinite world of variation that is, the world that they could,
It's almost like they
didn't prepare for.
The thing about that though is like with Thrones, right? It's like you're rebooting and restarting, and you are making some slight changes to the system to like fix the problem, but you're also not like really changing what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're not changing the direction that you can take the game. It's still printed cardboard, it's still gold costs and all this kind of stuff. So you just hope that you keep balancing it well.
Yeah, and also imagine if before they released Thrones 2.0, this is insane, but before they released 2.0, they went through the entirety, or 3.0, they went through the entirety of Thrones 2.0, took every single card and remade it to fit the system.
That's actually what I think was the fundamental flaw of Thrones 2.0 was you had players used to 1,500 cards in a card pool, now with 120. Whereas X-Wing is doing that differently, which is you're used to all the ships. Here's all the ships.
Yeah.
You can play it all. So we will see. Next question is from Alfredo. He says, do you guys think that FFG will create a competitive premium tier tournament structure where brand new X-Wing 2.0 players will not be at a disadvantage early in the first few waves versus 1.0 players who just had to buy the conversion kit and have access to all the previous ships? I certainly hope so, which is they're re-releasing all these products. I think organized play at the panel even was the most hush-hush, but also most like, hey, we're doing things differently in the future, so stay tuned. I would love to see a version of tournaments that is potentially even just like way more limited, like just a lot less ships. Because I know as a first edition player, not having access to a bunch of ships could feel restricting.
Yeah.
At the same time, if there was a tournament where it's just TIE fighters and X-Wings and B-Wings and TIE Advanced and just the Falcon and Slave One, very few ships, that would be great too.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think here's the key thing about that entire idea is that you shouldn't access to the first wave ships, given the way that they can balance the game, should have no impact on your success rate.
If all you have is the first wave, you should be
Like,
just as competitive.
If you're just rolling X-Wings and Y-Wings, that should be just as good as any other ship build in the game.
I 100%
right?
agree.
So
I hope that's the case.
I don't even think we need that. If you only have second edition ships, then you're playing a more limited squad that should be just as good as anyone who has all the tools available. Should be.
That's the hope,
We'll
at
see.
least, right?
Wouldn't you love it?
We will see indeed. I'm going to skip a couple questions here. See what's good. All right, Wade's Gaming Madness says, do you guys ever see the Wave 14 ships that are prepackaged with 2.0 dials and cards ever being reprinted as just 2.0? Don't want new players to miss out on their shot at the Reaper and Saw. I think absolutely.
You think Reaper and Saw get reprinted?
What?
You think Reaper and Saw will get reprinted as a full second edition expansion?
Yeah, I have to imagine.
You think so?
I think basically once the first print run of this runs out, if they hit reprint, I imagine that it would switch to 2.0 packaging.
That would make sense.
And all that kind of stuff, and then they'd drop all the first edition things. So if you want the first edition complete set, you may want to jump on the Sauce Renegades, ASAP. Next question, Justin Potts. Will there be new Covenant tokens for X-Wing 2.0? Looking to get into the game for 2.0, so I just didn't want to buy something that will be changing.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I am Iron Man.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we would be fools to miss that opportunity to totally relaunch that line, get to relook at everything. Like, we kind of get to reboot now. You've gotten 1,000 times better. Like, think about so early, those squad tokens and everything
I think they're the second ones.
were really designed pretty early in the process, and all of that has gotten so much better. And then we also have tokens in X-Wing 2nd Edition being a bit different in that they have the color coordination thing going on.
Related to the tokens.
So yeah, tokens and more, I think, on the way. For sure, tokens, templates, and potentially
beyond.
some new products.
Some cool stuff.
I think we
working
would
on.
be remiss if, with our excitement for the game and our belief that it's going to be very successful, not to try to capture that in some way.
Yeah, and X-Wing's been a big deal for us. Like it was a significant part of how we were able to grow in the past 3 to 4 years.
Totally. I mean, there was a before X-Wing and after X-Wing for Covenant, 100%. And you guys have been great all along in that. So,
Well, thanks.
definitely. All right. Next question is from Steve Feek. What was the deck Zach took to Destiny, and thoughts on X-Wing 2.0? We've been talking about 2.0 a lot. The deck I took to Star Wars Destiny was Han Rey.
Good meta call, by the way, Zach.
Hey, easy killer. Easy.
I don't get to razz you enough.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing about this, I actually want to talk about this for a second. I did, as I talked about on the podcast, I think, did a whole new testing process. We had 6 people locally here in Tulsa who were very committed to it. And we did a whole new song and dance, right? I've been going to tournaments for Star Wars games since 2012 and have done pretty well consistently, but I always kept running into the roadblock that was the semifinals. So made it to the 3rd or 4th place slot a lot. And after enough times of that in a row, it was time to burn it all down and try a totally new method.
Unlearn what you have learned?
Yeah, and just failed. Utter failure. And I won't say just failed. So here, I started out 3-1 against the meta decks, and I was feeling great.
Yeah.
It's like, with the deck. I'm playing Hanrei. I thought it was kind of a weird tangent. Blue, yellow decks, Yoda Hondo in particular from our testing was the most consistent by far. And so you get blue and yellow still, but you actually are a little more aggressive and can be faster.
And you have weird tricks that nobody's ready for. Fair trade, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Weird tricks going on. And in testing, like the couple of weeks before Worlds was rough, and I kind of like played a lot to get there, to get where I was comfortable. Went 3-1, and the one loss was kind of a weird game. And so this was all fine. And then next game got paired against kind of an off-meta deck, which is fine, but had a just weird series of things happening. Lost. And then by game 6, I was just like out of the zone.
Yeah.
And you know, went 3-3. I went 3-3. I had a great time is the other trick of this. And
that's
looking
not why
back,
you're there.
Yeah, that's not why I'm there at all. No, and you know what is funny about it is what ended up winning was Kylo Anakin, which is
It's a heart crusher.
really a heart crusher because I was playing that deck 2 months beforehand, and I love Blue Villain, and I love Kylo too.
Oh, no.
And so it's one thing to just miss,
Yeah.
right? I didn't even make day 2. Like, not even the cut. Like, I didn't even get to keep playing on the next day. But then to watch at home, live stream, this Kylo 2 deck by Edwin, who was a great player, round after round. And he, man, in the top 4 in finals got paired against a mono deck, so a single color. And
It's an instant win.
Kylo 2's ability is name a color, choose a card, random card in opponent's hand, do free damage if you get it right. So like as soon as I saw him get paired against mono yellow in the top 4, I was like, oh, this is gonna be easy. He's playing against Mike Jim, who was another great, hadn't lost all tournament. But Kylo 2 is literally the like counter to his deck.
Yeah.
It gets rolled. Goes to the finals, and it's like the other side. Joe from Hyperloops lost with his cool, crazy deck with all 3 colors to Ray Isla, which is a mono blue deck, and that goes to the finals. And I'm just like,
Oh, no.
oh my gosh, and it was crazy.
Cool meta, though. I mean, looking at that top 16, it was awesome. Like, there was a million different variations that were in play.
It was everything from Yoda Hondo to Thrawn Talzin to Ray Isla to Kylo Anakin. And the funny thing is, Ray Isla versus Kylo Anakin is literally starter characters versus a starter character and a rare.
Nice.
And it's
That's
just
pretty cool.
fundamentals,
That's cool.
which is great.
That speaks well of where
But
that
yeah,
game
it was
is
great
right
to
now.
see. A lot of variety there. I took Hanrei, missed. But I felt good about it because I still feel like I would have made that choice even with perfect vision. Because I do think if I made it into a best of 3 top cut situation, I felt great about those odds.
I want to draw your attention to something and ask kind of a side question, which is you didn't make the cut, obviously, but
Here we are.
you had an intensive, I think you said 6 weeks, with a bunch of guys at the store of like getting together, testing, working on a spreadsheet together, doing all this cool stuff. Like that, to me, is more than any sort of win. I mean, obviously, the win would be nice, but
and
like,
I think that's what that process was awesome. And normally it would be like I'd pick a deck, I'd play it at the store, and then I would like play on the side with Steven, or
Yeah.
I'd have one person that I sparred with a lot.
Well, you can see why you were doing well before.
Yeah, there's one difference here. But I do think, like, my biggest, like, looking back, there's a lot to learn, right? Like, I learned a lot about that process.
Cool.
And we even are talking, we're meeting this next week at Destiny Night to, like, talk about our process and how we can make it better.
See, that's so cool.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, you got a community going
But
now.
even that, it's like, I think I now need to blend the processes, which is like, normally you pick a deck like 8 weeks out, and then you just play that insanely. I spent those 4 or 5 first weeks playing the meta. So I knew the meta better than I knew the meta in any year previous. I just didn't know my deck against the meta as good as I needed to know my deck against the meta. So more on that. Stay tuned. Lots of
I
changes
want to
coming.
mention too, if you're listening to this and you're interested in Destiny and a Destiny player and amped about it, we have an incredible announcement coming for Star Wars
It
Destiny.
should be up by the time.
Probably
this is
up by the time that the podcast is up. But long story short, we are doing a series of tournaments for the game that are focusing on the draft format.
Covenant
And-
Masters.
Yeah, Covenant Masters.
I'm so jazzed about that.
yeah, we've been working on this for a
I
while.
need a constructed break anyway, but I am so jazzed about
It's
that.
going to be
Yeah.
really great. So you can find those announcements probably on the YouTube channel or in the newsletter if you sign up for our Star Wars Destiny list. Or if we're doing our job, you will not miss that
Yeah,
announcement.
you should have
I'll say
heard about it. All right, next question is from Michael Prosmans. Do you guys feel like there's going to be a replacement for the recently deceased Star Wars LCG, or do you feel that Destiny fills the hole as a Star Wars card game?
I wouldn't. Man, they're so leveraged on Star Wars and that Lucas license already. I just don't know if they would go back in.
So I would say there's a lot of rumors going on around about like hopeful for because that is a cool system. It's very different, but
Yeah.
a cooperative version of that.
It,
Which is how it started
If
out.
it's an LCG, I think at this point, if I'm in those meetings, it has to be cooperative. I think
LCG plus cooperative.
The most successful
awesome.
LCGs are cooperative games in long-lasting. Lord of the Rings has been running for 1,000 years.
Since the beginning of
Since
time.
the beginning of time, literally, it's been going. Arkham, one of the most
Predated
successful
the books,
LCGs. It's incredible. So yeah, I think that's the format for cooperative games.
Yeah,
You get
I
a
agree.
new section of the story every time, and you go.
Well, and I think, for me, it's like, I could see them doing it. I could also see them just not, right? Like,
Yeah.
they've been there, they've done a Star Wars LCG, it's gone. But the trick is, right, it's like, they have the LCD format, they have all the art for Star Wars, they're going to keep making art for Star Wars, they've got Legion and Destiny and X-Wing and Armada and Imperial Assault. So maybe. I wouldn't expect it soon, though. Like, I don't know. I think they're going to give some space on this one, because there's a lot. They learned a lot in the process with the Star Wars LCG. There was that game. I mean, I loved it, and it had a rough go that first 18 to 20 months.
I will say that from talking to Andrew, that interview will be up soon if it's not up already. The Imperial Assault app was hugely successful for them because it opened up cooperative play for Imperial Assault, and I can't help but think that's an indicator that this is the way to go. Yeah. It's the way to go.
Well, maybe they think they've already tapped the market.
If the three of us could either be stormtroopers, like that would be
so fun.
Can you imagine how
That's
fun that would
immediately
be?
so cool. It's like,
Or
you
if
got to
we-
go dispel with these rebels
Or
over
if we
here.
could be rebel heroes and we could somehow like level up our stormtroopers over time and get better guns and better. I mean, it writes itself, right? Everybody at FFG can figure this out. In terms of the design,
Yeah, like
they could,
thinking about Arkham ported into Star Wars, right? Where it's like, I have a character, and I'm building that character
That's
and
right.
upgrading and all this kind of stuff, and then set in Star Wars. We'll see.
Forget about
I
it.
hope so. Forget about it.
I would
All right.
love it. I would love it.
Last question coming
Speaking
from
of
Carl
cooperative LCGs.
Tan. He wants to know, what are the chances for Aztec-themed Mythos tokens? And he's asking this because we released
the Forgotten Age Doom token.
Doom
That's
token
right.
this week.
Something that we're going to continue doing in the definitely foreseeable future. Basically, a new cycle of Arkham comes out. We can release a new, very thematic Doom token to fit that scenario because there's those scenarios through that cycle. Because it's so cool to have Doom tokens that are fitting the intensity of the scenario that you're playing. So with Carcosa, you see that Yellow King symbol, and it's like you feel like you're in that zone. With Forgotten Age, oh my gosh, it's so good. John did a great job with this.
Thank you.
You see these
One
like
of the coolest tokens
eyes
I've
appearing
ever
from the
seen.
jungle and these skulls, this Aztec-inspired design, and it's like you're exploring ruins. It feels like it. It's really incredible.
And this is part of why we mentioned earlier the 2.0 X-Wing. Are there going to be new, squad products by us for that game? This is exactly a perfect example of why that needed to happen anyway. If you look at that Aztec inspired token, right? It's like that thing is crazy.
It's awesome.
Like, it is next level. And I saw it when it came off for the first time. I was just like,
it's just awesome.
it's too much. So I can't wait to see what comes in the future.
As for the rest of like Aztec-themed Mythos tokens, I would say cleverly that
that'd be cool.
we don't have any direct plans for further Aztec-themed Mythos tokens, but there are some plans for further Aztec-themed products.
And if you want to know how close you guys are, I'm literally looking at the design right on.
That may be the coolest thing I've ever seen.
If it happens. There's a lot of
You know.
stuff we got to get through.
It's sort of like those L5R.
It's fun. This is so fun. I love it.
All right. Well, stay tuned.
Hey,
You'll find that out.
Also, before we get out of here, I got to give a shout out to the I Rebel Star Wars Destiny podcast getting an 8-bit looking Qui-Gon Jinn card randomly in the mail, which is really cool. So thank you guys so much for that.
I got a con.
Zach got one as well. That's very thoughtful. And then maybe one of the cooler things that's happened to me is I got a random package from Norman, Oklahoma, and I checked everyone I knew in Norman, and they claimed they didn't send it. But this is the Darth Maul C from, I'm holding in my hands, from the Star Wars trading card game, which is the card that I discussed when we were talking about saga sets and why they were so good in that video about how I could never track this card down when I was playing.
Oh, that's so cool.
With like a 14 or 15,
Someone just bought it and
16-year-old.
sent it to you or had it and
Somebody
sent
sent it to me with the note, "May all your childhood dreams come true. Keep up the great content."
That's
one of the more
so
meaningful
great.
things that's happened in my life. So whoever you are, thank you very much for that.
That's
I truly
fantastic.
appreciate it.
That's really great.
Also, Jonathan's been here officially on payroll for 5 years now. 5 years.
We did it.
That's amazing.
We did it. We met it right across,
And
right over at
really
Nords.
for about 10 years.
Yeah, really
Maybe
for
11,
10
maybe
years.
12.
Well, that was when it was like, all right, hey, let's drop all this like side crazy stuff and
Yeah.
like whatever and like
Yeah, before it was just like, hey, you got some free
Because it's
time.
important to know you shipped orders, you worked the store. I mean,
Customer
it's
service.
not. It's the whole thing. It's an organic process.
But officially signed on paper, employee.
Yeah, officially signed on paper.
5
I was
years.
a legal member of Covenant.
Legal.
Illegal.
Illegal members.
We're about to go celebrate.
Hey, before we cut out of here, a couple important things. One, remember you can use the hashtag AskCovenant. We'll answer your questions right here on the show. In particular, with the new kind of format we're looking at doing, we need a ton of questions. So if you've ever had a question you want us to answer, it can be anything at all. It can be gaming related, not gaming related. We'll consider answering it at the very least. And we really appreciate it. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, hashtag AskCovenant. Please leave your question. And then finally, in the event that we are playing a game next week, what game would you like to see us play? And if we choose your game, you can either post or link to a deck, and we may just use your deck right here on the show. Until next time, keep playing.